He hadn't seen a woman in decades. Not since the world beyond the mountains had quietly forgotten him. Not since the dust roads stopped carrying visitors and the radio crackled only with static and memories. And as the sun rose over his ranch that morning, painting the land gold and copper, Elias Crow stood on his porch the same way he had for 40 years. Weathered hands gripping the rail, eyes scanning a horizon that never changed, a horizon that had become his companion, his witness and sometimes his jailer. Elias was not a bitter man, though loneliness had carved lines deep into his face. He was a man who had chosen solitude after loss taught him the cost of loving too deeply. After a life that once held laughter, music, and the soft presence of a woman vanished in a single winter and never returned. The ranch was vast and unforgiving, stretching farther than the eye could see, dotted with cattle, old fences, and a windmill that groaned like an old friend with aching bones. And in all those years, Elias spoke mostly to the land, to his animals, and to the ghosts that lived quietly in his thoughts. He cooked for one, worked for one, survived for one, and if he sometimes paused at night, staring at the stars, wondering what might have been, he never let the question linger long enough to hurt. That morning was no different until it was. The horses in the east pasture grew restless first, snorting and shifting as if sensing something unfamiliar, and Elias narrowed his eyes, following their gaze down the dirt road that cut through the valley like a scar. At first he thought it was a mirage, heat rising too early, playing tricks on an old man's vision, but then shapes became clearer, movement more deliberate, and his breath caught in his throat as he realized there were people coming toward the ranch, 6 of them walking in a line, slow and purposeful, dust swirling around their boots. Elias felt something stir inside him that he hadn't felt in decades. Alertness mixed with disbelief, because people did not come here. Not anymore, and certainly not like this. He reached for his rifle out of habit, not fear, and rested it against the porch rail as he watched, heart pounding louder with every step they took closer. When they emerged fully into view, the world seemed to tilt beneath him, because they were women, 6 women, each striking in her own way, dressed in travel-worn clothes, faces marked not by vanity but by resolve, strength, and exhaustion, their eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made Elias forget how to breathe. He had not stood this close to a woman in so long that the memory felt unreal, like recalling a dream from childhood, and yet here they were, flesh and bone and dust and sweat, walking straight toward the loneliest ranch in the valley. As they reached the edge of his land, something even stranger happened. One by one, without a word, they stopped, lowered themselves to the ground, and knelt before him in the dirt. Elias froze, the rifle slipping from his grip as it hit the porch with a dull thud. His voice caught somewhere between shock and confusion as he managed to whisper, What are you doing?" None of them answered immediately, and the silence stretched so long that Elias thought he might collapse under its weight, until the woman in the center lifted her head, her gaze steady and unafraid, and said softly, "We've come because we were told this land belongs to a man who does not turn away those in need." Elias felt a tightness in his chest he hadn't felt since grief had first hollowed him out, because he didn't remember telling anyone such a thing, yet somehow it felt true, like the land itself had spoken for him. He asked them to stand, his voice rough and unused to conversation, and when they did, he saw stories etched into their faces, stories of loss, of escape, of courage forged under pressure, and he realized with sudden clarity that these women were not here by accident. As they spoke, slowly at first, then with urgency, Elias learned they were strangers not just to him, but to the world he knew, women who had fled something they could not return to, guided only by rumors, whispers, and a belief that somewhere beyond the mountains there was a man who lived alone, untouched by cruelty, who might offer shelter without questions. Elias listened, and with every word, the walls he had built around his heart began to crack, because he saw not threat but desperation, not intrusion but fate knocking loudly on his door. He invited them inside the ranch house, a sentence he never imagined saying. Again, and as they crossed the threshold, the air inside shifted, filled with voices, movement, life, and something dangerously close to hope. The house, once a mausoleum of memories, suddenly felt too small for the weight of what was happening, and as Elias poured water, shared food, and watched them eat like people who had gone too long without safety, he realized this was not just a visit. not just a coincidence, but the beginning of something that would change him forever. And as night fell and the fire crackled for the first time in years, Elias sat among strangers who did not feel like strangers at all, unaware that by sunrise his quiet world would be tested. His past would rise to confront him, and the reason those 6 women had truly come would finally be revealed. If you want to know what happens next, why they chose his ranch, what danger follows them, and how a man who gave up on the world finds his life rewritten, make sure you subscribe now, because Chapter 2 will change everything you think you know about this story.